The sky above Harvard Yard gleamed like polished brass, the sun casting golden stripes across the ivy-covered buildings and perfectly manicured lawn. Graduates bustled in clusters, their caps tilted slightly askew. Sashes dancing in the spring breeze, proud families surrounded them, snapping photos, offering flowers, shouting congratulations. Amidst the celebration, Harper Langston moved like a shadow. Her black blazer was neat-pressed professional. A white badge was clipped to her lapel, the kind handed out to vendors and overflow guests. It read only, "Guest," no crest, no family seal, no title, just a word in plain font colder than any insult. She walked slowly toward the seating tent, heels silent on the gravel path, heart thudding behind her ribs like it was trying to break free. Claire Langston, her older sister, was radiant under the Harvard arch. Her scarlet robe shimmered under the light gold cords draped over her shoulders, her curls bouncing as she laughed with Dean Stafford Thomas and Evelyn Langston flanked her like sentinels, father in his gray pinstripe, mother in a cream Chanel set. They looked exactly like the kind of family Harvard donors adored, glossy sculpted legacy may. They hadn't noticed Harper yet. Or if they had, they pretended otherwise. She paused at the edge of the tent, scanning the seating chart. There it was, Langston Family Row. Underneath Thomas Langston, Evelyn Langston, Claire Langston plus 2 guests. Harper's name was nowhere. She blinked, her throat dry. The usher approached with a kind but distant smile and handed her the white badge. She took it with mechanical fingers. Her mother turned at that moment. Their eyes met. "Oh," Evelyn said, voice flat. "You came." "I got the forwarded invite," Harper replied. Evelyn didn't flinch. "Well, you're here now. Let's keep it polite. This is Claire's day." Harper nodded once. Claire glanced over with a nervous smile and leaned in for a brief hug. It was automatic, rehearsed. "You look amazing," Harper whispered. "Thanks," Claire murmured. "I'm glad you're here." But her eyes flicked sideways toward Evelyn, who stood stiff and watching. Always watching. Harper found an empty seat near the back, next to a snoring grandfather and a toddler eating a crushed granola bar. She sat still as the ceremony began. Applause rolling like waves as speakers took turns praising the future. She folded her hands in her lap, ignoring the sting behind her eyes. Then Thomas Langston stood. He stepped up to the microphone with a practiced politician's smile. "Today," he began, "we celebrate our daughter Claire, her brilliance, her discipline, her integrity." A pause for applause. But this moment is more than celebration. It marks a necessary transition, a reshaping of family values and vision. As of today, Evelyn and I will no longer extend our name support or recognition to those who have repeatedly failed to uphold our standards. From this day forward, we acknowledge only one daughter. Gasps. A sharp intake of breath. Harper froze. Her badge burned against her chest. No one moved. The only sound was the faint whir of a camera lens adjusting. Claire's face was pale. She looked down at her shoes. Harper did not cry. She did not stand. She sat still, each heartbeat a dull knock against her ribs. She wanted to vanish, but ghosts don't disappear. They're already gone. The ceremony continued like nothing had happened. But Harper was no longer part of the scene. At the reception, she stood at the edge of the tent, watching the clinking of champagne glasses. The posed photos, the congratulations passed from mouth to mouth. She found the Langston table. A white placard read, "Congratulations to our only daughter, Claire." A stack of monogram notes rested beside it. One bore Claire's name in golden ink. Harper took it without blinking, slid it into her purse like a receipt. A woman in floral turned to her. "You must be one of the assistants," she said cheerfully. "You're not wearing the family pin." "No," Harper said, "I'm not." She left the party before dessert. The train ride back to Somerville was quiet. Harper leaned her head against the window, watching trees blur into glass and sky. The carriage rocked gently, but her thoughts did not. They moved sharply, precisely, as if something inside had snapped into place. Her apartment was small but clean. Books lined the walls. No family photos. Not anymore. She hung up her blazer, sat down at her desk, and opened her old laptop. Her hands moved instinctively, a folder marked L Foundation, Internal. She clicked. Surprisingly, her access had never been revoked. She remembered setting up the cloud account 3 years ago when she helped design the Langston Foundation's accounting system. They never noticed details. They never thought she mattered enough to clean up after. She scrolled budgets, tax files, property transfers. Most of it familiar dull, but then a folder labeled Holdings Updated. Inside Transfer Authorization, Cape Estate PDF. She opened it. Her stomach dropped. There it was, her name Harper Langston. Typed, centered, clean. Next to it, a signature, her signature, only it wasn't. The loops were wrong. The H was flat, the angle too sharp. It had been forged. She pulled out an old lease agreement from her desk drawer, placed the two side by side, not even close. And beneath the signature, notarized by C. Langston Clare, they sold the Cape Elizabeth property. The one her grandmother left for both sisters. The one Harper helped repaint, garden, and clean each summer. She sat back slowly. This wasn't just erasure. It was theft. Cold and silent and deliberate. The kind you only commit when you're sure the other person won't fight back. Harper stood up, crossed to her bookshelf, and pulled down a dusty box. Inside, birthday cards, thank you notes from donors. She had helped secure a photo of her and Claire on that porch. She slid the congratulatory card inside the box. Then she sat again, pulled the laptop closer. Her hands moved faster now. Document backups, financial ledgers, messaging archives. She wasn't crying. She was cataloging, recording. She clicked open a blank folder and titled it Contingency. This time, Harper Langston would not disappear. This time, the ghost had teeth. Chapter 2. Paper cuts. The glow of the laptop cast a cold blue light over the kitchen table. Its hum the only sound in Harper Langston's Somerville apartment. Outside, the city had gone to sleep. But Harper was wide awake, her fingers hovering above the keyboard, trembling not with fear, but with clarity. The PDF file blinked open. And there it was again. Her name, or rather, a mangled version of it. She leaned closer, zooming in on the forged signature. The H had the wrong curve. The loop in the G of Langston was too shallow. It was a poor imitation, but notarized. Nonetheless, Savannah Langston, Claire's cousin and longtime family notary, had signed off on it. Harper felt her jaw lock. The document labeled Transfer of Trust Asset, Bar Harbor Property, showed the estate in Maine had been sold 2 months ago. The new owner, a shell company. Harper traced it in 2 clicks. Langston Equity, Claire's new boutique firm, a cozy name to mask the theft. Her hands went cold. She opened another folder, then another internal memos, donor meeting, transcripts, emails from Evelyn Langston, her mother. We'll move Harper off the trust. She doesn't photograph well with our narrative. Click. Claire has the brand look. Harper's better behind the scenes. Click. Legally, it's all covered, just a matter of presentation. Each line landed like a paper cut, small, shallow, precise. But they stung all the same. Harper had known she was being pushed out. She hadn't realized they were also rewriting her out of history. She reached under the table and pulled out a weathered shoe box, one she'd kept since college. Inside were letters from her grandmother, Elise, old photos and a faded copy of the original will. She unfolded it gently, breath held. There it was, her name handwritten by her grandmother, beside the clause designating the Bar Harbor home. To Harper Langston, for her quiet loyalty and stewardship of family memory. Tears burned her eyes, but none fell. The will she held had been overridden, replaced, redrafted, and redistributed. Her name had been erased from the version used during probate. No announcement, no warning. Just a silent swap. The kettle whistled a piercing note in the silence. Harper poured hot water into a chipped mug and took it back to the table. She opened a blank document, titled it Summary of Unauthorized Actions. She didn't write with rage. She wrote like a clerk logging evidence. Bullet points, dates, signatures, screenshots. A full timeline of betrayal formatted with legal precision. Every lie given a timestamp. Every omission documented. At 2:12 a.m., she called the only family member who had ever warned her, Aunt June. The phone rang 6 times before a tired voice picked up. June Langston. It's Harper. A pause, then softly. Oh, honey, I figured you might call tonight. Did you know about Bar Harbor? Harper asked, her voice tight. Silence. Then a weary sigh. I knew something happened. Savannah notarized it, but no one talked to you. Your mama said it was just a tax shuffle. I didn't want to believe. It wasn't a shuffle, they sold it to Claire's firm. Another pause, then a trembling reply. Then it's worse than I thought. Harper nodded, not caring that June couldn't see. I have all the proof. I just needed to hear someone say it wasn't in my head. June cleared her throat. It was never in your head. It was in their plan. When the call ended, Harper sat still for a long time. Then, with hands steadier than they'd been all night, she opened her email. To Lawrence and Finch, LLP. Attorneys of record for Langston Foundation. Subject request for legal clarification regarding unauthorized transfer of trust property. Dear Mr. Finch, I am writing to request clarification and legal examination of a recent transfer of trust asset, specifically the Bar Harbor estate, formerly held by the Langston Family Trust. Please find attached documentation indicating a notarized signature made in my name without my knowledge or consent, as well as an earlier copy of the original will, which names me as a designated beneficiary. Please confirm receipt and advise on next steps. Sincerely, Harper Langston. She attached 12 files, clicked send. The clock struck 3:01. She leaned back exhausted. But beneath the fatigue, something else stirred. Not anger, not grief, not anymore. It was purpose, and purpose was sharper than any pain. The game had begun, Chapter 3, the reputation war. Harper woke to the relentless vibration of her phone on the nightstand. It was 6:42 a.m. The sunlight barely pierced through the curtains of Naomi's guest room, but her notifications were already pouring in. Texts, missed calls, mentions. Her screen was a wall of pings and previews. She didn't need to open them to know something had exploded overnight. With a tight breath, she unlocked her phone. The first thing she saw was a Facebook post, public and polished, shared by Evelyn Langston, her mother. We have only one daughter. The other chose a different path. Sometimes protecting your family means letting go of those who harm its legacy. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. Harper sat still for a long time, the phone screen glowing cold in her hands. Naomi knocked once, then peeked in, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. It's everywhere, isn't it? Harper asked flatly. Naomi nodded. It's ugly. They sat in silence at the small kitchen table. Steam curling above the mugs, Harper scrolled. Her name was being dragged across mutual friend groups, former co-workers' comments. Even distant relatives she hadn't spoken to since high school. I always thought she was ungrateful. She just wanted the attention. Claire earned her spotlight. Some people can't handle that. No one knew the truth. No one asked. She checked Claire's profile. Silent. Not a single word of support. Not even a clarification. Claire had simply liked their mother's post and shared it. Harper wanted to scream. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because she could see the narrative forming, tightening like a noose around her character. They were rewriting history, and she was expected to disappear quietly. Naomi broke the silence. You gonna let them write your story? Harper stared into her cup. Her hands were trembling not with fear, but with fury. She stood without answering and walked into the guest room. On the desk, her old laptop waited, humming faintly. She opened the folder named Proof. Inside were PDFs, scans, recordings. Every bank transaction, every board email, the deed with her forged signature. She opened another folder, voice memos, quiet snippets of conversations recorded during meetings, donor lunches, phone calls. She'd kept it all. Not out of spite, but out of instinct. A lifetime of being erased had taught her to document her existence. With calm precision, she began compiling screenshots. Quotes, timeline. She didn't write a sob story. No anger, no accusations, just facts. The post began simply. They erased me, so here's the paper trail. Then came the evidence. A scan of the original will. A side-by-side comparison of the forged signature. An email from Evelyn. Harper's involvement muddies the image. Let's keep it clean. A voice clipped. Thomas. The Bar Harbor property is being folded into Claire's firm. No need to notify Harper. She doesn't contribute to the brand. The final image was a photo of the guest badge from the graduation labeled simply, not even a name. Harper clicked post. It was done. She turned off her phone. No notifications, no reactions, just silence. In the quiet of Naomi's apartment, she finally exhaled. This wasn't a tantrum. It was testimony. She stepped into the living room, where Naomi was pretending not to refresh her browser. Posted it. Harper nodded. Now what? Harper poured herself a glass of water. Now we wait. But it wasn't just waiting. It was watching the tide turn. For the first time, the story wasn't being told. About her. She had taken the pen back. The war for reputation had begun. And the Langstons, for all their control, their choreography, their curated perfection, weren't ready for a daughter who no longer needed their stage. At 3:00 a.m., the phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Harper lay on the worn-out couch in Naomi's living room, a borrowed blanket tangled at her feet. The apartment was silent, but for the shrill, repetitive chime of incoming calls. She flipped the screen. 10 missed calls, 6 voicemails, countless texts from Mom. What are you doing? You're destroying everything. Take it down, please. Harper didn't reply. She simply stared at the message, the calm in her chest oddly steady. There had been a time when one word from Evelyn Langston could dismantle her. That time had passed. She rose from the couch and walked to the kitchen. The linoleum floor was cool against her bare feet. Naomi, ever the light sleeper, appeared moments later, rubbing her eyes and holding out a mug of chamomile tea without a word. Harper accepted it with a nod. They sat in silence at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the gaps. It's going viral, Naomi finally said. Your post. The comment section is intense. Harper took a sip, then nodded. I knew it would stir something I didn't know it would burn. The backlash had begun swift and vicious. Her family had underestimated the public's thirst for drama. But they also underestimated the quiet loyalty of the people who'd seen Harper over the years. The gardener who once helped her repaint a fence. The retired event planner who remembered Harper handling logistics, while Claire smiled for the camera, and classmates who had long suspected the perfect Langston image was built on someone's silence. The tide was shifting. By noon, news outlets were picking up the story. Not tabloids, but business blogs, nonprofit watchdog sites. People were asking, who is Harper Langston, and why was she erased? The Langstons responded with fury. A formal letter arrived via email and courier. By the afternoon, legalese peppered with veiled threats, cease and desist, defamation damages. But the final blow wasn't the threat. It was the notice of a civil suit filed that morning. Thomas and Evelyn Langston were suing their own daughter for financial exploitation and elder emotional distress. Naomi gasped as she read over Harper's shoulder. They actually did it. They sued you. Harper didn't flinch. They'd rather destroy me than admit what they did. But fear crept in nonetheless. Naomi grabbed her phone. We need a lawyer, not just any lawyer. Someone who knows how to punch back. By that evening, Harper sat across from a volunteer attorney at the Boston Legal Aid Society. A sharp-eyed woman named Alicia, with calloused confidence and a binder already half full. I've seen cases like this before, Alicia said, flipping through copies of emails, financial records, screenshots. It's not just about revenge. It's image protection. They built a brand and you just became its liability. Harper nodded. I have proof of everything. My bank transfers my signature samples the real will from my grandmother. Then we fight back. Alicia said, you don't just defend, you counterattack. They began building a response, a formal answer to the complaint, a motion to dismiss, based on evidence of fraud and a potential countersuit. The Langstons wanted silence. Harper would give them the law. 2 days later, the first hearing was scheduled. That morning, Harper dressed in a black blouse and navy trousers. Naomi drove her to the courthouse. Neither spoke. When they parked, Naomi simply placed a hand on Harper's shoulder. No matter what happens, you already won the moment you stopped hiding. Inside the courtroom was sterile fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A few local reporters lingered near the back. At the plaintiff's table sat her parents, dressed impeccably, looking every bit the part of the wronged elite. Harper took her seat beside Alicia. Her heart pounded, but her hands were still. Her mother glanced over. Her father didn't look at her. The judge entered. The bailiff called order. The hearing began. Harper didn't speak during that first session. She let Alicia handle the legal arguments, but her presence was louder than any testimony. She held her head high. She didn't flinch when her mother wept theatrically, or when their attorney called her unstable and entitled, because Harper knew something none of them expected. She had evidence. She had a paper trail, and more than anything, she had truth. As the session recessed, the judge scheduled a formal hearing on the merits. Harper stood, turned toward her parents, and looked them both in the eye. I'm not here to argue, she said quietly. I'm here to end it. Then she walked out of the courtroom, without looking back. Chapter 5. Her name in full, Miss Harper Langston. This court recognizes you as the rightful heir. The sound of the judge's gavel echoed like the final beat of a war drum, and Harper felt her lungs release a breath she hadn't known she was holding. The courtroom was still, but something had shifted. The silence now was not tension, but recognition. It was justice finally catching up to a truth long buried under reputation power and carefully curated lies. Thomas Langston's jaw clenched in the front row. His eyes fixed not on the judge, but on the floor. Evelyn sat beside him, her mouth pressed into a straight line, lips drained of color. Claire was not present. She hadn't shown up since the second hearing, not even to witness the moment their empire lost its polish. Harper stood, thanked her legal counsel, and exited the room to a flurry of whispers, the kind usually reserved for celebrities and scandals. She didn't stop to bask in it. She didn't need the attention. What she needed now was something far simpler. A month later, Harper stood in the kitchen of her new apartment in Providence. It was small, sunlit, with creaky floors, and a window that looked out over a narrow street lined with bookstores and bakeries. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She poured a cup of tea, set it on the windowsill, and opened the front page of the Providence Courier. Tucked in the corner was a small column about the Langston Foundation suspension, pending investigation, fraud, financial abuse, image manipulation. She didn't smile, just turned the page. That afternoon, Harper walked 3 blocks to the community center. She had recently joined a program for young women estranged from their families, helping them gain financial literacy and emotional stability. It was the kind of work she knew too well. It felt like rewriting a history she never had a chance to shape before. In the shared office, she hung a small photo of her grandmother above her desk, the only family who ever told her, "Write your name big, make it count." Assam. A week later, a cream-colored envelope arrived in her mailbox. The return address was the Langston family's legal firm. She recognized the logo instantly. Inside was a single-page letter. A formal proposal for reconciliation. The language was clinical, polite. The undertone was unmistakable. They wanted to negotiate, not out of love, not from regret, out of necessity. Harper sat on her couch for a long time, letter in hand, eyes unfocused. Part of her still longed to believe it could be different. That maybe beneath the control, the manipulation, There had once been love. But memory is not fiction, and truth doesn't come with a ribbon. That evening, Harper drove to the edge of the city. There, tucked in a quiet hilltop cemetery, rested the only woman who ever spoke to her, without an agenda. She knelt by the grave of her grandmother, laying the unopened letters from her parents and Claire at its base. She opened the oldest one and read aloud. Family is blood, yes, but love is chosen, and if they don't choose you, you get to choose yourself. Then Harper lit a match. The flames curled around the pages like a sigh. She watched the smoke rise into the sky, carrying away years of silence, guilt, and the ache of unreturned phone calls. When the fire burned out, she whispered, "I'm done asking for a seat at their table. I'm building my own. Saw mine, mum. I'm done." Back at home, Harper opened a fresh notebook, the kind with thick pages and a hardback cover. She titled the first page in bold letters, "The Ghost Badge," and underneath she wrote, "Sometimes the only way to honor your name is to take it back." She didn't write for revenge. She wrote for truth. For every person who'd ever been erased, edited, diminished for the comfort of others. Her cat, a gray tabby she'd rescued from a shelter, curled up by her feet. The city outside her window buzzed as it always had. But inside she felt something rare and powerful. Silence. Not emptiness, not isolation, just peace. Harper Langston was no longer the ghost in her own story. She was the author. And this time, every letter of her name was written in full. At her sister's Harvard graduation, Harper Langston wore no name badge, no family crest, just a silent badge marked guest. That day, her parents disowned her in public. But what they didn't expect was Harper's quiet storm. In this fictional narrative, inspired by real emotional truths, Harper uncovers forged documents, exposes family betrayal, and reclaims the legacy meant to erase her. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about self-worth, courage, and the painful rebirth of someone who dares to say, "I deserve to exist fully named, fully seen." We often think loyalty means silence. But sometimes silence only serves those who wronged you. Harper reminds us, healing isn't soft, it's powerful. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Like this video, subscribe for more empowering content. And never forget, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and write your own name.